Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Questlove Supreme. I'm Questlove, your host. It's actually, have we ever tag team Tickolo?
I don't think we have. I think this
is the it's the tag team adventures of Fon Tickolo and Questlove. How you doing, man? What's
good,
up? How's your week been?
It's hectic. But I did
I saw a few posts. Are you allowed to talk about it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we had our first like little brother show in like 2 years over the last weekend.
How was that?
And it was insane. Very surreal. Afterwards, I had these two kids come up to me and were like, "This is the greatest show we've ever seen." Two white girls, 17, and her sister, who was 12.
Wow.
That was the 12-year-old, she said it was the first show she'd ever been to ever. And I was sitting there talking with my homegirl, Charlotte, and we was just sitting there, and I was like, "Hi, man." They was like, "Oh my God, you guys were getting it so hyped. It was so great. And I love the pink. I love you in the pink shirt. We love the pink." I was like, okay, thanks for the fashion tip. You know what I mean? But
how did they know to even see you?
Well, they were
both of them are younger than your career.
Straight up, I got albums older than both of them. So we were opening for a band called Sylvanesso, and they big ups to them. That's family.
Oh, Sylvanesso, yes.
So they did like a 3-night kind of festival thing in Durham, and we were like the support act for night 2. And yeah, man, we came out there, and it was our first show. Me and Pooh put the set together like the night before. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this, do that, and we went out there. And at the end of the show, towards the end. Normally we would ask at the beginning, but for this night we asked at the end. We was like, "How many of y'all is your first time seeing Little Brother for the first time?" And like 90% of the hands went up. They had no idea who we were, but like we rocked that shit. And so it was crazy. It was surreal. Like to be.
You're now a 20-year veteran.
Straight up, no, bro, facts. Like 20 years in to still be picking up new fans. That's kind of surreal. And I'm noticing too that post-COVID crowds. I don't know. And Rick, we can ask you about this as well if you want to wait. It seems to me like post-COVID concert crowds and pre-COVID concert crowds are two different things.
Yes.
Because like everybody's high. Everybody's high.
100%.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first gig we did. Hi, by the way. I remember the first gig we did.
I'm going to introduce you, but go ahead. This is the cold open.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, first gig we did in the UK, and that first gig was kind of crazy because we did it at a place called Nebworth, which is a legendary country house, if you like, just outside of London. Okay, and there's been some amazing gigs done there. But we played to about 2,500 people instead of 250,000 people because they all brought their car and they had a picnic space. And so they all sat in their cars or on the bonnet of their car, the roof of the car, what have you. And they were all given a picnic space. So it went on for about a mile, this thing, but it was amazing because when the lights went down, the sun went down, everyone was using their car lights to sort of say, for applause. Yeah. And it was amazing. So it was a really strange gig, but I could see, especially in the crew and the people who'd been building the stage and you know what I mean, and everything, you could see people were really, really emotional. I mean, being on stage is an emotional thing, full stop. But being on stage in front of a crowd after that, all that time, it was amazing, absolutely incredible. And we did a few that summer that were just amazing. It just made you feel lucky, made you feel, I don't know, like a newfound respect for being allowed to do what you do. No,
100%. It was very much like watching the crowd. It was not versus in the past where you would see people kind of in their bodies, for lack of a better word, where it's like, throw your hands up, scream, shout, whatever. It's like all of that. You can just see them just kind of in their heads. Like they're just watching it and like, like just kind of taking it in and they're enjoying, they're having a ball, but they're just in their heads, just kind of watching it. And that was definitely something I noticed. I'm like, okay, these post-COVID shows and the pre-COVID, it's a whole
night and day.
Different thing.
Well, that said, ladies and gentlemen, our guest today, I will say that our guest is probably beyond just fame. Okay, so he's a musician, singer, songwriter from the UK. I like to say the UK like I'm from the UK. I only lived there for 4 years, but I make people from the UK actually think that, that I'm an actual like lifelong resident there. you know, and he came into our radar, at least my radar, for a lot of us here in the States, you know, of course, in the late 80s, and made it absolutely impossible to forget his music. And I'll say that's an actual achievement. And even to this day, those singles, very strong, very potent singles are dropped, and it's instant happiness and joy, you know. And even going as so much to say, albeit kind of an unusual achievement, but I'll ask you, Fonte, if Michael Jackson owns Halloween and Mariah Carey owns Christmas, I almost think that our guest today might own April Fool's Day. Which
Yeah.
is kind
He
of
really might. He really might.
which is kind of a weird quote to say. And you know, I'm not even implying that our guest is a joke or his music's a joke, far from it. But you know, for clarification purposes, I'll say that you know, we all live in the you know, this like the 20th, 25th year of really the internet sort of in our lives. And
I think
I
he
will
might
say
have been the first meme, yo.
yes,
He
exactly.
may have been the first, what we now know as internet meme culture. Like,
Yes.
that's the first one. I think he really was the originator.
Well, definitely one of the earliest examples of the sticky factor, as we know, as something viral.
Mhm.
You know, which in the eyes of Gen Z, like that's a serious achievement. Our
That
guest is
means more
definitely
than a
a
Grammy.
yes, it's the same. You know, you will be here forever, long after we're going from Earth. You know, and in the fact that even his name can imply, you know, not only being a proper noun, but you know, to be Rick rolled is the new okie dokie, falling for the okie dokie, or having successfully pulled a prank. I'll say that in my research, I didn't realize that YouTube themselves, when they, you know, established in 2007, 2008, YouTube themselves actually invented what we call Rick rolling. For the three of you that don't know what Rick rolling means, it's the thing where someone shares a serious video with you, and then about 12 seconds in, you're hit with, again, the irresistible course of never going to give you up. You know, and you know, I will say that probably during the pandemic, I'm giving a shout out to my pal Jen Grable from Philadelphia, who is one of the biggest Rick Astley fans ever. I've fallen down a vicious rabbit hole and looking at anything that you do in concert, she'll instantly send me. So, you know, to see these Springsteen covers, a Born to Run, and your Nirvana covers, and you know, everything from your Foo Fighters to AC/DC covers, you on drums, all these things. You covering like the Smith songs. Like I'm really genuinely this, you know, I had to have you on the show because I've like discovered a rekindled sort of a fandom for our guest today that goes way beyond just like, you know, the Rick rolling part of his career. But you know, this is a long time coming. So welcome to Questlove Supreme. This is Rick Astley. Thank you for joining us, man.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for that extraordinary introduction as well. I'll take that on board in a very heartfelt way. So nice to be here.
Well, we mean it. Where are you right now?
Right now we're between Vegas and Fresno. I'm on tour right now. I got invited last year to come to America and do a tour with. Are you ready for this?
Yes.
New Kids on the Block, En Vogue, as I call them, En Vogue.
En Vogue.
I've been told you've got to say En Vogue. I'm like, no, I'm European. It's En Vogue. And Salt and Pepper. And we're having a lot of fun, I can tell you. And we had a day off yesterday, which is always nice. Obviously, we're in Vegas, we had a bit of fun. But the gigs have just been amazing. And it's very unusual for me because I haven't done anything like this, certainly in America anyway,
Right.
where you get a group of artists together and go out and do that. I have done it in Europe and different places, but I've never really been to America and do it. And obviously we're just having a ball right now. So I'm on my bus right now heading to Fresno.
So that also explains the video that came out with the four of you. Bring Back the Time.
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah.
So it's so weird because normally, you know, I'll see package tours and acts get together and, you know, they might interact with each other, whatever. But the fact that you guys got together to sort of collaborate and no one saw this coming, like, could you explain the genesis of how that came to be? Who put it together?
Tell me a headline act in the world who does that.
Amir
No one.
did that.
Oh, okay.
I'm about to say, I pioneered this.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No. But I no idea is original. But you know, I always hated the ideal of like someone goes on first, someone goes on second, which is, you know, which is why I'm also kind of, I know it's comedy, but the whole DL Monique thing, because I just think that, you know, it's more unique to do. Motown reviews used to be that way, like 3 songs from Stevie, 3 songs from the Supremes, 3 songs, and then people come back and interact. So I've been doing that for like 20 years, and I'm finally, when you said that, I was like, finally someone else is doing it. That's dope.
That's dope.
Yeah.
I will
really
say
cool, and
I was going to say that even up until 2017, 18, and 19, there'll be occasional towns in which the Roots and New Kids on the Block will be in the same hotel, and absolutely nothing has changed. Like now, you know, Donnie told me, like, you know, back in the day, it was the mothers trying to hook up the daughters, but now it's like you have daughters taking their mothers to New Kids on the Block shows, and
Wow.
they're hanging around the hotel.
Yeah, but there's a lot. I'm telling you, what has kind of shocked me a little bit. Of course, most of the audience is of an age because they were there for the first records. They bought the first records. They went on all the tours.
Right.
But I'm telling you, it's kind of odd. There's a lot of younger people in that audience, and they know all their tunes, and they are like fully paid up members of being the Blockhead family and everything. And it's really nice to see. But I think, you know, you guys were talking about the internet before. That's just changed the way that everybody listens to music, obviously, and gets their music, but also the way they feel about it.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't sometimes have the same thing that I certainly did when I was a kid about, oh, that's for old people.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think older people are afraid to go and say, well, you know what? I want to go and see this artist, even though I'm old enough to be their mum or dad.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to go and see them. And I think that generational thing has gone away to a great degree, you know. It's
no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I just think the festival thing, if you look at that, it's so eclectic these days, who you can be on before or after or on the next stage to and what have you. It's just unbelievable. So when you look at the audience, there's a bit of that as well. You know, it's a random bag of people that just want to hear music, you know, and don't really, so it's I think it's quite a beautiful thing, to be honest. But
no, I do too. I think this, like with the audience now, you know, because no one has to pay for music anymore. I think that it's just pretty much they have the room to explore in a way that we didn't. You know what I mean? If we had to go to the record store, you had $10. That $10 was a choice. You know what I'm saying? You had to make real decisions. But now, you know, with everything available, they just hear music, you know. And I saw that was what I saw at the gig. Like, they don't even think, like my kids and my sons, like they don't even look in terms of genre or anything. If they like it, they like it, and that's all they know, and that's all they care about.
I think the other thing is they don't actually care if the artist is dead, and I don't mean that in a callous way or a no emotion way. They're just like, I love this. What is it? Oh, it's Frank Sinatra. Oh, really? Do you know who Frank Sinatra was? Not really. Well, come and have a look at this, and I'll explain it to you.
Yeah,
you know
there's no more context. There's no more new music and old music. It's just music you know and music you don't. That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us where in the UK were you born? I'm assuming that you were born in the UK. Where were you born?
Yeah, no, I was born in a very, very small town, and it's equidistant from Liverpool and Manchester. It's right in the middle of both of them. It's about 20 miles either side. That town is called Newton Le Willows, and that is hyphenated, as in Newton in the Willows. It sounds a lot posher than it actually is. It's okay. It was an okay place to grow up and everything. And my sister still lives there, and my mum, up until she passed away, recently lived there. And it's an okay town, but it's a small town. And we then, so for us, going to either Manchester or Liverpool was our way of going to a shop that might have some actual trendy clothes, or you know, more than one record store. Do you know what I mean? Where you could go to like 4 or 5, you know. And obviously the first time we really went to stores to go and look at musical instruments, that was in Manchester, because, you know, you jumped on the train or you got, you know, an older brother, sister to take you, and you went into Manchester. That was our big deal with, you know.
I see. Can you tell me what your first musical memory was?
It's hard to say, obviously, for anybody. I know the Jungle Book record was a massive thing for me. I mean, all kids love Disney and they love Disney music because it's amazing. The quality of it is always great. They're still doing great music, I think. But the Jungle Book, for me, we had that vinyl record at home, and I'm the youngest of 4, so my sister was into all kinds of music. She used to go and watch a lot of, well, she used to watch everything. She'd go into Manchester and Liverpool, and so she had a really great record collection. But a lot of her music was like, there was a lot of progressive rock in it. But she'd also have like quite a bit of Bowie, but she'd have a lot of, you know, American classic soul as well, Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, obviously things like that. She loved the Beatles as well, so I grew up with a lot of that. But I wanted the Jungle Book because obviously to me, I'd been taken to the movies to see the film. And once you've seen a film like that, and then you've got the vinyl of it at home, you can kind of watch the movie again in your head, can't you? And
right,
I just loved it. And that's, so for me, that I probably just sat there waiting for everyone to leave the room, and then got my, you know, my moment to put, because we probably had one record player when I was 5 years old. Do you know what I mean? That was probably it. So, but I think in terms of, I just went to see Paul McCartney actually a week or so ago in Fort Worth in Dallas. We had a night off, and a lot of the Beatles music, as for anybody, obviously, of course, for everybody on the planet, but it was a bit of a game changer, some of those records, I think, even as a really young kid, because a lot of their music at certain times has got a lot of childlike quality to it. There is, we all live in a yellow submarine going in there. And that, so that as a kid, that brings you in, do you know what I mean? Then all of a sudden you're listening to, I don't know, the whole of Sergeant Pepper or what have you, and thinking, what is this? But it's when I say childlike, I don't mean that in any derogatory way. Obviously, I mean, there's a real innocence to some of their stuff, even though it becomes really complicated and intricate and beautiful as well. There's a real simplicity to it at times, you know. So I think the Beatles were quite an easy one to get into as well.
Well, because they were influenced by, you know, Tin Pan Alley, which you know, that sort of era of music of Tin Pan Alley is closer to show tunes and
musical stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, it's rather genius that you can create music that an 8-year-old that can stick to an 8-year-old and an 80-year-old at the same time. And
absolutely,
and seem hip. Do you remember the first music that you purchased yourself with your own money?
Well, it wasn't money exactly. My dad had given me some money to go and buy a pair of jeans, right? And there was a store. This wasn't in Manchester or Liverpool. This is in a local town to us, a small town. There was a little store that sold jeans and all kinds of different things that kids would wear, you know. And he gave me the money, and I went in and I bought the jeans. I was probably only about 9 years old at this point. He was probably outside in the car waiting for me, kind of thing. And I went in, say 9, I could have, whatever. Went in, and it also had like a little record store as part of it, which was a bit bizarre, I guess, but whatever. And you bought a pair of jeans on that day, and they allowed you to have a single. So I went in next door, and I'm just looking. I had no clue, and I knew my dad was in the car, like waiting. He's like, he's not going to be messed around, you know. So I just said, I'll have whatever's number 1, please. and it was, luckily, it was "I Feel Love" by Donna Summer. So I got a great record out of it anyway.
77.
But that wasn't my. So I was 11 now, I think. That it wasn't necessarily a choice, and it wasn't really my money, if you know what I mean. It sort of came with the pair of jeans.
Right.
But it was quite a thing, because when I went home, I suddenly kind of realized I own this record. It's not one of my brothers or my sisters. This is mine. Do you know what I mean? Because all I'd done really was just pinch their records and just played them. You know, that's all I'd done up to that point. So
what did you, so for you, at least by that point, did you have a singing voice? Were you?
I was always picked to be in school plays. I was in a church choir as well, but it's not, as you guys will know, it's not a gospel or anything. It's a very, very Church of England, and very kind of straight and white, and like, you know, but it's still singing with other people. And that, I still think that thing of a choral group of people making that I'm going to say noise. I'm not even going to call it music right now. Just making that noise together is the most, what's the word to use? It's the most sort of primeval way of making music, because you know, when you take away the organist, and I remember we used to do that. We used to sing just on our own a lot of the time, and especially when he was like getting us through different pieces to learn them and everything. It's just a bunch of people using this to make a noise. And it's quite, I'm not saying I use that at all today, but I think it's still, it did something to me. Even though I only did it for a couple of years, but it definitely made me aware of the fact that a group of people come together, harmonize or not, or what have you, and make music. And there's no even instrument to go through. Do you know what I mean? And I even think from a timing point of view, because I got into playing drums when I was a little kid and stuff. I wouldn't say little kid, but I was probably in my teenage years. If you're not in sync and in time as a choir, it's just a mess. And I think that even sort of got me going a bit with, you know, got to be on the rhythm, you know, on the beat and everything, you know.
So you use the basically singing with a choir taught you how to blend with other voices, and
I guess, yeah. I mean, I'm still not very good at that now, to be honest. I'm one of those archetypal kind of big head front person singers that when I try and do harmonies, I do the harmony and I'm great, and then at some point I go, oh, I've lost it now, and I start singing the lead again. Yeah, because I find it really hard to do it. And even when I do, you know, when I'm working on something at home and I'm just putting harmonies in and stuff, I sometimes have to map them out on a piano and then bang them into my head, do you know what I mean? Literally, to be able to get me singing the harmony. So yeah, so I don't know.
So by the mid 70s, and I've heard, you know, this narrative from people that grew up in London at the time. I mean, so many types of music sort of avenues could be traveled by. Like, of course, you know, the punk movement is, you know, is ramping up. Then the sort of, I guess you could say, the mod movement, or you know, whatever they call Rudies, or whatever you would categorize the Specials or Madness, that those types of groups, or whatever, ska groups or whatever. And then of course, you know, I know about the history of Northern Soul, and generally just, you know, the respect that the UK has for soul music in general. And of course, you know, 77's where disco is also having its moment. What grabbed you? I mean, to be 11 at that time when there's like 5 options to go to. What grabbed you the most?
I think I always have responded to singers, full stop, because I think as much as I admire, I mean, you know, perhaps we'll get into that, I don't know, but I mean, because I started playing drums as a kid, I always loved bands that had interesting drummers. So the Police I absolutely loved, and they weren't punk, but they sort of came out of the punk thing. Phil Collins is one of my all-time favorite drummers, and he's not even remembered as a drummer half the time. It's ridiculous, but anyway. But there you go. And I think, but I know for a fact that I think certainly with my sister played a lot of Motown at home, and a lot of Northern Soul as well, actually, and they're very, very, very similar. And to be honest, I struggle to find out which is which half the time, but whatever. And all of those records are very much about the vocals. I mean, you were mentioning Motown before about when they used to go out and do tours and stuff, like a review tour and stuff. Any one of those vocalists would, in my opinion anyway, kind of wipe the floor with a lot of people who've had the chance to make records since, to be honest. I think Motown was an absolute golden era for vocalists, because even though the songwriters and producers of those records were incredible and amazing, and they had such a platform to go from as a singer, those voices have stood the test of time forever. And I don't think there's a person with a pulse that doesn't respond to Motown. And obviously it's the groove, it's the feel, it's the everything. It's also because Marvin Gaye, Diana Ross, whatever, you know, name any of them, when they sang, you didn't question it at all. It was just truly amazing.
Do you have a memory of your first concert?
Yeah, well, I can't remember which came first. My sister, like I said, used to go to gigs all the time. So when I was about 10, my sister took me to see one was Supertramp, which is self-explanatory for anybody who knows Supertramp music, and I'm sure everyone does unless you've been living under a rock.
Right.
As a 10-year-old kid, I was completely blown away, but blown away in loads of different ways because I was 10. I shouldn't really have been there, perhaps, but I think she used to think I was like a fashion accessory to bring a 10-year-old kid to a gig where everyone's kind of smoking different things and what have you and hanging out and da-da-da. But it just blew me away. And their music, I think, is because the other band, and I don't know which was first, was a band called Camel. And that's a progressive rock band. And I've said this before, who have flute solos longer than some of the records I've made. Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
so it's
shit,
kind
really?
of like, yeah, I mean, you know, it wasn't about vocalists, it was about the music, it was, you know, but the Supertramp one, I think, was amazing for so many different reasons. They were, well, still are, but they were such an amazing band because they had great, like, sort of pop songs. Maybe that's not a fair term to call them, but they were very popular, so they were pop songs. But the instrumentation and the way they used to go about it was really quirky, was really different, and kind of a bit like nothing else, to me anyway, listening to it. So I came out of, well, both those gigs, but I can't remember which one was first. And I think it was a game changer for me. I kind of thought, I want to do that. I want to do that. Because when the lights went down, they turn on the smoke machine, and then the colored lights come on, and it all, even back then, you know, going to a gig was like this mythical experience. It was like something, it was like another world, you know.
Right.
So yeah, so I think both of those were game changers, yeah, big time.
So can you talk about your experience? What it is, the first band you were in, it was called FBI?
Well, that was the second one. I was in a band called Give Way, because we have a sign in the UK. You may have it in America. I can't remember. It's a triangle. It says Give Way. And our bass player, Jeff, stole one on the way home from somewhere and stuck it in front of my drums. And we said, oh, that's what we're called then. Right, okay. So, yeah, that was when I was still at high school, as you call it. And there were 3 bands who did an audition for the music teacher to see who could play at the Valentine's disco. Right, and we were like 15 going on 16 at this point. I was never one of the cool kids at school. I wasn't really a geek. I wasn't like, you know, a SWAT or a whatever. I just got through school, if you know what I mean. I just kept my head down and got through it. The other couple of bands, one of them was all the cool kids. Like there was a captain of the football team, soccer team, captain of this, you know, the good-looking guys. They had all the nice guys, but you know what I mean. They were the cool kids, you know. And we weren't, but we could play. So we did the audition and we blew the other bands away. I was singing So Lonely by the Police from the drums, which was like the coolest thing in the world because it was like, you know, we were doing Police songs and they were doing something that wasn't anywhere near as cool as that.
Right.
And we did a couple of other things. We also did a Joy Division song, which again was like just the coolest thing in the world, I think. You know, the teacher were not expecting that at all. And so we got the gig, and I got 5 Valentine's cards that year.
Were you the lead singer of the group, or was it?
No, the bass player Jeff was, but I used to sing a couple from the drums. And again,
your voice was that high to sing So Lonely?
I sang it an octave lower.
I was about to say, man, like
yeah. Hard for that.
Wow. Yeah. And yeah, and I just think, again, talk about pivotal moments and stuff. Not because I got the Valentine's cards, but we walked around school for the next 2 weeks as if we were different people. Like people, we didn't have high five back then, I don't think. I don't think it was a thing to high five somebody. But it was like, people just kind of like, you know what I mean? Just getting acknowledged in the corridors at school or out in the playground or what have you. We became different people overnight because we'd done this gig, and it was like, yeah, I don't know really. It was very interesting, I think, in terms of your ego, right, and just the absolute joy of walking off stage, going, wow, we just did that. That just happened. People actually listened and danced, and you know, so yeah, it was pretty amazing.
I went through that in high school, but I wasn't the band that blew everyone away. I was one of the bands that got blown away because I went to school with Boys to Men. So
oh wow. You joking?
Yeah, so I still say they cheated, but they had tuxedos and glitter and
Wow.
top hats and canes and everything, and
Oh my word.
they were singing New Edition songs, and I just felt like
Wow.
all my hopes and dreams to impress, like who I wanted to impress,
Nah, it's
just
over.
went down. It went down the drain because, like,
And could they sing that great then as well? Were they really great then?
dude, yes, they were. If ever there was a group of people ready for their close up, it was
Wow.
Boys to Men. And the thing was is that after that Valentine's thing was over, like girls were treating them like it was, you ever see the I Want to Hold Your Hand movie?
Oh
Robert
yeah.
Zemeckis' first film about the Beatles.
Yeah, yeah.
Like they were chasing them in like seventh period and all this stuff. And I'm like, it's just them. Like, what the
Yeah,
hell? They're
yeah.
not stars. They go to our school. But yeah, they after that performance, things were never the same again.
But
And
I listen. I feel your pain, and I also think it's a weird thing. No, I was not one of the kind of cute kids at school or good-looking kids by any stretch of the imagination, right? But I think what happens is when you've been on TV and on a record cover and on a what have you, the media themselves start calling you handsome or start calling you something. I don't know what, but and it's like, nah, you got this wrong. I'm exactly the same as I was last week. It's just about a hit record. Yeah, I don't know. It is a weird thing, but I mean, that is pretty crazy to be at school with Boys to Men and them singing the way they do. If they were singing like that back then, that must have been wild.
yeah, they had every girl in the palm of their hands. So by this point, at least, were you thinking of a music career by this point, or was it just like, you know,
I
I'll
think,
graduate
yeah,
school and then go to university and
no, I think I wanted to. I think my upbringing was kind of what was it? I'm from a very working class area, but my dad had a little business. He ended up having a little garden center,
Okay.
and we all my two brothers and my sister and all of us kind of off and on did work there. And I used to work there in school holidays and after school and all the rest of it. And so we were lucky in the respect that we did kind of have a little job to go to. He didn't like have a big. He didn't employ lots of people or anything. I think he employed one or two other people, and then we kind of worked there and stuff. And the where we were from was kind of hit very, very badly in the mid and late 80s in terms of the way that the world changed. We don't manufacture so much in the UK anymore, like America to that degree, and we don't do a
Mhm.
lot, coal mines and all the old things that,
Oh, the whole industry.
that we're
yeah,
still hanging on to.
yeah, and people certainly from the little town where I'm from and a lot of towns around it, those things don't exist anymore. And it was in that transition period. So we were really lucky that my dad did have a little business and it survived and everything. But we didn't really have a lot of money or anything like that. And I think for me, I wanted to get out of that little town, and I wanted to go and do something with my life. I don't know what that meant. And I think the truth of it was I kind of felt that music was a way of possibly doing that. And I did love music. Don't get me wrong, I did. I got a drum kit when I was 15, and I was never ever off it, just ever. I used to play in my dad's greenhouse, which he used to have this fairly big glass house, where the plants were and all the rest of it. And he allowed myself to have a drum kit there and my two friends to come and play there as well, which is we made an awful racket, even though we were, we thought we were great. But
Mhm.
so that was pretty lucky. But I also think my mum and dad divorced when I was really, really young, and I didn't have the happiest of home lives, if you know what I mean. It wasn't tough, it wasn't horrible in what a lot of people have been through, but it definitely left a hole. There's no doubt about it. My mum and dad, they're both passed away now. They never spoke to each other ever.
Wow.
If my mum rang the house, my dad would just kind of like he'd just put the phone receiver down and walk away, and that's how we knew it was my mum. Do you know what I
Oh,
mean? And I was brought up by my dad. I lived with my dad because it's a long story, but I saw my mum all the time. But I think I also felt somehow, even at that age, and I'm not saying I actually knew this, but I think I felt it somewhere, that music and getting out of that was going to take me away from that. Do you know what I mean? It was going to give
mhm.
me a different life where I could sort of start again. And I think sometimes if you're brought up in a fairly unhappy house, which I was, you just want to kind of like turn the key on a door and walk into another space and just leave it where it is. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying you can't ever go back there, But I'm just saying, just start again. And I did feel that music was going to be the escape to do that, you know, to get in a successful band and just start again, you know.
So when did that moment happen for you where you're like, okay, I'm pursuing this 100%?
I'd have to say I was about 17, I think, because the band that I got in next was called FBI. And the first group I was in, that we were in for a little while, one of the guys went to university. And so and he's still a friend today, actually. I see him for coffee like once every 2 weeks. But he went to university and, you know, all the rest of it. And we just split up. So I joined this other group, and they were called FBI because of, it goes back to a group called the Shadows, who were the backing band for Cliff Richard. Do you know who Cliff Richard is? He's an English,
I know Cliff Richard.
Okay,
Dreaming.
Yeah, it goes through. So he was like the English Elvis, if you like. You know what I mean? He was like you know, and they had a song called FBI. I think that's where it comes from. And the guy who was the lead guitarist in this band that I joined, called FBI, was a Shadows freak. He absolutely loved them, and so did his dad. I think he got it from his dad, really. So they were doing covers like that. They were doing a lot of early Beatles songs, which are fantastic and great, don't get me wrong, but I would have loved to have been playing some of the later Beatles songs, but we weren't. We were playing the really, really early ones, which is still great, like I say, and for a young band to learn them anyway. And I got in that band as the drummer, and I sort of became the singer because I wanted us to kind of try and write some of our own material. And I borrowed a guitar from one of the guys, and he showed me the 3 chords. And so I turned up at rehearsal a few weeks later and said, I've written some songs, should we thrash them out? And I sort of became the singer because of that, really, because they were all looking at me going, well, who's going to sing that? You know, and they said, well, you are. So that's it. So we got a drummer. And then from that point, I think I just sort of became the singer by default, really. And at that point, I thought, if we're going to make this happen, I'm going to have to push and drive this. And I think when you started doing your own songs, you think that's a different thing. That's not just earning a living on a Friday and a Saturday and having a regular job. Do you know what I mean? Like doing your job and then earning a bit of extra money. That's how do we become known? How do we get people to hear these songs? And that at that point was like, well, that's what I'm going to do then, you know?
So at that point, at least with your singing voice, because you have such a distinct, I guess you're a tenor.
Yeah.
How do you like? Who are your influences as far as your singing? Because it's a very soulful, rich voice that you have, but not soulful in terms of let me flex my soul card and I'm an R&B singer, but you do have a very kind of smooth delivery with it. So by this point, are you developing the voice that we know now, or you're still trying to find?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things is, I think in the late 80s, a lot of British music, there was more kind of it was pop, definitely pop, and it was in the charts. It was successful, but a lot of people sang with a much lower tone or a lower register with their voice. It was very normal. Today, and I think for 25 years or more, everything's very, very high with male singers most of the time. And I think back then, a lot of records had a lot of, like, for instance, there's a guy called Edwyn Collins who was in a band called Orange Juice, right? And he had this voice.
Edwyn Collins,
yeah. And there was a lot of them. There was, I'm trying to think right now, and I can't because I'm on the spot to think of them. But what I'm trying to say is there were a lot of voices that were deeper, and it was kind of cool to be that. It was edgy and it was cool. But then when I listened to, for instance, if I listen to like Bill Withers is obviously one of the greatest. He's written some of the greatest tunes. One of the things I absolutely loved and still love about Bill Withers is that he's written some of the biggest songs in the world that 5-year-old kids to 85-year-old grandmas know. Everybody knows. They've been in movies, they've been in everything. But he could probably be sat next to you eating a bowl of pasta in a nice restaurant somewhere, and I think 95 to 90% of the people in the room wouldn't be able to recognize him. And I think that was, for me, was like an amazing thing about him, really. But that, again, that's another universe to walk into. But I think, but he had all the soul in the world, his lyrics, the actual music itself, and the way he played and everything. But his voice obviously was incredibly soulful. But he didn't really do tricks with his voice. He didn't do lots of trills and lots of this, that, and the other, which a lot of people do associate with soul and R&B and everything. He didn't do that. He was, for me, he was like a folk singer, just with a lot of soul in it, just a lot of soul. And so I think somebody like him, and even though Luther could obviously do anything with his voice, and I remember seeing him live and walking out of the room and just sort of going, well, just forget it then, because that's it. There it is.
Yeah.
There
See,
it is,
in your
you know.
personal time, you try to do a ooh, like.
Well, to be honest, no is the answer. I very often still sing to this day. I will always sing "Never Too Much" to my wife if we're ever in the car that comes on, or what have you, because that's one of our songs, and I always sort of sing along with it. But he was one of those. I don't care what anybody says about anybody else. He was one of those singers that it didn't matter where he was in the whole range of the human voice.
Right.
It sounded good everywhere. He could do anything, that guy, you know. So
I was going to say that you know, I can't overstate enough, and it's only because, you know, I got to know Luther's longtime manager, Shep Gordon. I didn't realize how big Luther was in the UK.
massive.
Yeah, to the point where I didn't realize that he could sell out like what
Wembley Arena, for instance.
Wembley Arena.
Yeah, Wembley was the gig. Back in the day, Wembley was the gig in London to go to, Wembley Arena.
Right.
And Luther, I think, did multiple nights there, I think.
Yeah, he did like 8 or 9 nights there. And
yeah,
he was telling me that basically Luther had a more devoted and diverse fan base.
Yeah, for sure.
Over there than here.
Yeah.
You know, here, I mean, here, yes, he could still, you know, sell out Madison Square Garden, all those things, like maybe 1, 2, 3 nights in a row. But you know, it took him a long time to sort of cross over to a pop market, you know, like Here and Now, or, you know, Give Me the Reason. Like there was occasional songs that made the top 10, but I didn't realize until like I finally watched like live in Wembley and realized that, oh, I didn't realize that Luther.
No, he was huge, and also I think he and a lot of other artists around him. But I mean, he, for me, vocally is the pinnacle. There's no doubt, really. But I mean, James Ingram was really big in the UK as well. Jeffrey Osborne, a lot of those singers around that time that you know, I think probably a lot of their ballads were bigger as well. If you know what I mean, I think that was what's probably crossed them over to some degree as well. You know,
Right.
But we would go, I say we, a group of friends, most of which were in the second band I was in. We would go to a little night. Well, we'd go to different clubs around us, actually, in different towns and into Manchester and stuff. But in our little town of Newton Le Willows, we have a little cricket club, and it's been there forever. And they used to have Monday nights and Friday nights. And the Monday nights were under 18, and the Friday were over 18. So there was alcohol and all the rest of it. But they also used to have occasionally on a Friday night, they had a guy called Kev Edwards, who was a DJ in the town I'm from. Kev. And he would only play records that, I'm not saying all of them were imported, but he always used to have records before anybody else. So he would play, and we all used to go and we'd dress up. We wore jackets and ties. This is in the sort of 84, 85, 86, right? We would go and wear jackets and ties. Well, I'm saying 85, 86 for sure. Cheap ones, you know, we just bought these jackets and ties from God knows where. Do you know what I mean? But we'd all go and we'd dance in lines. We actually, and all the girls especially knew dance moves and different routines, and a certain song would come on. And for instance, let's say, I'm not sure when Never Too Much came out exactly, but let's say that song came on. Some of the girls would actually even have a routine for it.
Oh, really? So it was choreographed, and
that's not just my little town where I'm from. That is, especially, that was a very big thing in the north of England, but also in the south. If you speak to people about, I mean, not just Luther Vandross, obviously, because like I say, he's probably the biggest one to cross over in so many different ways. I think a lot of that music that was around that came from America, Black American soul music, was a massive part of our are getting down and having a good night and having a good, you know, we wouldn't even drink alcohol. We'd just go out and drink an orange juice or a Coke or what have you, because we wanted to go and dance to music. And that was a big thing for us. It really, really was.
What a novel idea. Now we just do it on TikTok.
Pretty much.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So what's the, take us on the path that leads you to actually pursuing a solo career,
Sure.
and meeting with Stock, Aitken
Waterman. Well, we were the second band I was in, FBI. We weren't really making waves exactly, but we were getting better gigs and we were earning a bit of money and we were this, that, and the other. We'd had one or two record labels come and have a look at us, but they were a bit, you know, we were too naive really, and we didn't really have it together really. But anyway, one of the guys who came up to see us actually saw us in what we used to call a battle of the bands, where you would have, you know, over maybe a couple of nights or even a couple of months on different nights, bands would come together from an area and we'd all be competing for a prize basically, but also it was like little audiences you could get together. And to judge us in one of those. And he requested that he really would like to see us again. So in other words, we did a showcase for him with a couple of other bands. And it sort of turns out that we kind of did that really because he liked my voice, heard something in my voice that he thought that there was some potential in it and he could do something with it. Okay. So he asked me to come down to London, and I did with the two guys who were kind of managing us at that point. And I didn't really exactly grasp who he was or what he was, but he had red leather pants and he had a Jaguar. And that was enough for me. That was enough. Red leather pants and a Jaguar. I mean, come on. So
he's obviously doing something right.
Yeah. So I went down to London to meet him, and he kind of explained that, look, he wasn't interested in signing the band. He didn't really want to work with bands. He wanted to work with vocalists because he was part of this trio that were good. And they weren't really famous at that point. They hadn't really had any really big hits at that point. They were just on the cusp of it. They were right on the edge of it, but I didn't know that. But I kind of thought, well, I signed a little deal with their production company after about 6 months of chatting a couple of times about it, because I didn't really want to leave my friends, which they were, my, you know, my closest friends and all the rest of it. But in the end, I thought, look, I drive the van, I write the songs, I sometimes have to get people out of bed. So I'm just going to give this a try. And I did. And
how hard was it breaking the news to them though?
Well, that wasn't comfortable at all. I thought one or two of us were going to come to actual, you know, fists and what have you, but it didn't. It didn't. And it was all, you know, but it wasn't great, if I'm honest. And at one point we were just going to try and keep the band together, and I was going to pursue this and see what happened and see if we could marry the two together or get something going with a single or two and then see what we could do. But anyway, I signed a deal with them after a little while, and then amazingly, they had a #1 record with an artist called Princess.
Sam, you're #1?
Sam, you're
yeah.
#1.
They did that?
#1. Yeah. So you know that tune, yeah? Oh,
yeah, that's a jam.
Hell yeah.
Okay.
Well, for starters, I didn't wait. She's from the UK?
Yeah.
Dog, I thought she's from Brooklyn.
No. And
oh my gosh, Sam, you're #1. Damn, they did that.
So I was kind of around. They had their own studio, and I was kind of around in the process of them. I'm not saying I was on the sessions, I wasn't, but I was kind of around a little bit. And so they had this #1 record, and everyone in the business in the UK went, what is that? Who is that? Who's she? Who produced it? We wrote it. What's going on? Because it was a big record. It was a #1 record, but I mean, it was also quite a sort of an ear turn. It was like, what is that? Because it had like a toe in a lot of different places, if you know what I mean. A finger in lots of pies. I don't know. It wasn't. I'm not saying it wasn't R&B, but it sort of wasn't. And it was very British sounding, but it also sounded kind of like. And she was a great singer. Obviously, is a great singer. You know, but I'm saying it could have been. It was a lot of things. You know. Anyway.
It was to me, it was like a lush song. It wasn't a ballad, but it also wasn't a jam. But I always heard it in clubs, and even the chord structures and stuff, like it was very dreamy sounding and very unique song. I love DJ.
It's a cool record. I think it's a cool record. I think.
Yeah.
So anyway, and at the time they're also working. They just started working or around that time on Dead or Alive. So that
Mhm.
you Spin Me Round record, that whole album and everything.
All right.
And the record industry, I think. I mean, I'm going back. I'm kind of putting the thoughts. I'm not saying I had the thoughts at the time. I'm just remembering what was going on and what I must have been thinking. But they were looking at a meeting. Well, we signed this kid, and I think they'd signed somebody else as well. But we're not going to get to work on them because all of a sudden we're like beginning to be a little bit hot as producer writers, and people are asking for us to do things.
Mhm.
So we can't start doing our own projects because people are throwing money at us, and we need to pay the bills. So, in a nutshell, Pete kind of sat me down and said, "Look, we are going to make a record, but we've got to get on with this thing right now. Do you want to come and live in London, and you become like an assistant, hang out at the studios, get to see how we do things?" Because I was green as grass. I was pretty nervous. I'd only been to London like twice in my life before then anyway, and so I got to live, and I ended up living at his flat for the first weeks of it and everything. I just used to go into so I would go, he'd be driving his Porsche, because he had a Porsche as well at this point. So he must have been doing something right.
Mhm.
He'd be driving this Porsche and he'd be on his massive 80s phone having these conversations. And I'm sat next to him, this 19-year-old kid going, I have no idea about the language he's using, because it was all about record deals and A&R people, which I didn't even know what an A&R man was at that point. All this different stuff. And I'm just trying to soak it up and learn,
Mhm.
So I ended up being at their building, I'd say for 9 months, maybe even a year. And I made tea, coffee, got the sandwiches like all the other kids did in the building, all the tape ops as it used to be.
Mhm.
And then Bananarama came in the building and they made some great records for them. And it just kept going. So they made all these. And then there was this a sisters duo called Mel and Kim, who they had massive success with as well.
Get fresh at the weekend.
Yeah, there you go.
They did that too?
yeah, they did that. Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah,
Are they still alive? Are they still is that team? Are they still alive?
Yeah, the three guys, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't work together anymore, but they're all still going. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Dude, I had no clue that this was coming from London. Like in my head, like I thought this was all like New York stuff. Like,
well, they would be really happy to hear that, to be honest, because I think the thing with those guys, what used to frustrate me at times later on, this is that they got pigeonholed, but they almost did it themselves. They kind of created a sound and went, "That's what we do, and that's it," right? But and I think artists fitted into that sound more than them. But in the early beginnings of it, I don't think they did. If you listen to that, say on my #1 record, you listen to Spin Me Round, you listen to Mel and Kim, they are three very different sounding records, different artists, different everything. And I think they wanted to emulate like a Motown. But unfortunately for me, I think they didn't then go out and try and find Diana Ross, Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder. They thought they were good enough to get anyone to sing their songs and still have that thing. You know what I mean?
So at what point are they ready to put you in? Like,
well,
are you ready?
One of the issues was, I'll just explain this for a second, because so they'd signed me to their production deal, right? Their little production company, which sort of went on the back burner. It kind of got shoved to the side because they were producing major hit records for artists and with big record deals. You know what I mean? So Pete Waterman said, right, I need to sign Rick to a major record label because this is the way this is going to work, really. Them doing it themselves, they did do eventually, but I think they just thought, we just need to get him signed to a major record label and give it a really big push and all the rest of it. So, yeah, exactly. And just trying to, I think they were seeing what was happening with some of those records and thinking, right now, at the end of the 80s, you need to be with a major label. That's the way to do this. You know what I mean? So, so we went to see a guy called Peter Robinson, who was the head of A&R at RCA in the UK. Lovely guy. I've just met him again recently a few times, actually. Lovely guy. And he said, well, this is all great to Pete Waterman, but I need to hear Rick sing in front of me. I need to see him sing songs, hear him just sing some songs for me. I can't sign the guy just because, he's going to be your next artist and you say he's great and all the rest of it.
What a novel idea. Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't happen now.
Yeah, well, so we're in the car, we're in the Porsche on the way back, and he's on the phone, right? And he said to Matt and Mike, which is Stock and Aitken, and they're the two musicians in the threesome, really. Pete's more A&R and ideas and all that. Said, right, you need to do like a little showcase with Rick singing for Pete Robinson at RCA. And they both went, nope, that's not what we do. We're making records. So Pete said, right, you know those demos you've got, Rick? And I've done these little demos in a 4-track studio back in the hometown where I'm from.
Uh-huh.
I went up north, went home, got the vocals taken off, brought them down on a cassette, played the cassette for Pete Waterman, Peter Robinson from RCA, a couple of other people, one of my kind of managers at the time. And I sang on an SM58 microphone, which to everybody listening who doesn't know is the bog standard. That's what you use in it. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. No reverb. And it just came out of this shitty speaker that I'd found in the basement because I was one of the tape ops making tea and getting the biscuits, right? So I knew where all the shitty old gear was. And I sang in the reception to 4 of my songs that I'd done, right? I'd played everything, demoed and everything. So as soon as I've finished the songs, Peter Robinson from RCA says, who wrote these songs? And Pete Waterman, at this point, has got no intention of me ever writing a song. said, oh, he's a great songwriter as well. So, because obviously he knew within a second that was his way that he was going to get a major deal.
Right.
The artist that they signed and owned and, you know, whatever. Mm-hmm. So I ended up from that point getting like, I got 4 songs on the first album. I didn't get a single on the first album, but I got 4 songs. And I got like a few more on the next record and stuff like that. But I was sort of, all of a sudden, I was getting to do my demos. I think I already was actually, but I was getting to do my demos on like an SSL board with an engineer who last week had been making a #1 record with Dead or Alive or whatever. And I'm doing my demos like that because that's just the way it was, you know, and I used to do them at the weekend or through the night. And so I can't remember what we were talking about, to be honest, because I was getting excited again, remembering all that. But anyway, it was like a mad one of those moments where it's like, I'm just going to sing their songs and that's cool. We'll just see where it goes. To, okay, now my songs are involved and they were naive songs. Don't get me wrong. They really, really were. But, you know, yeah, I don't know. I was really lucky, I think, to be at the Stock Aitken Waterman moment where it exploded and they became this huge thing. And even though I hung around for almost a year, making tea and getting the sandwiches and tidying up the room, you know what I mean, doing all of that stuff, I also got to do a lot of stuff. Like I used to go to the pub every night with the guys and I was allowed to sit on their table while they talked about, you know, how to produce this. And they talk about, well, have you heard this new record, that kick drum, the way that does this, or this bass line is amazing, or what have you. And it was like like doing an internship, but I just didn't realize I was doing it, you know?
Yeah, I was going to say, what were you around for, like one of the songwriting sessions when they're putting songs together, or is it always just here, sing this? It's already done.
I mean, they Never Gonna Give You Up, for instance, the first, you know, my first song and biggest one, obviously. They'd hired a guy called Ian Kerno, who was he wasn't a programmer, but he became a programmer for them. And I mean, programming the loose terms of he was an amazing keyboard player and he, you know, put tracks together for them and stuff and ideas and stuff. So Mike Stock came down to his room and I was literally making the coffee. I remember it. I just made a fresh pot of coffee. Mike Stock comes down. They just bought a Fairlight computer. I don't know whether you guys ever worked with a Fairlight back in the day. Yeah. So they just bought one.
I'm familiar with it.
And I was like completely blown away by this. I was like, what world are we living in, you know? And so Ian set to work and Mike Stock came down. He put the chords in and he kind of sang in the melody, the rough melody, you know. And Ian was making some notes and all the rest of it. So I just kept Ian going with coffee and biscuits and sandwiches and whatever he wanted. And I sat there having just heard my first single and then kind of watched it get put together. And then obviously we went upstairs and took it into the big room and all the rest of it. And, you know, and that song went through so many transitions because the bass line and the drums were very, very different than when they began. And I've got to give credit to the Stock Aitken Waterman guys for that, but I've got to give more credit to Colonel Abrahams, to be honest, because they pinched the bass line from Trap.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so I was around. I think I was kind of one of the only artists who was actually part of their setup, if you know what I mean. A lot of the other artists came in and some of them actually wrote with Stock Aitken Waterman or just came into the vocals or whatever it was. but I'd literally been round to the, you know, the Greasy Spoon Cafe to get their lunches for the last 6 months. Do you know what I mean? And got the coffee
Right.
and all the rest of it. And I even remember there was one session where a guy had come in to do a sax solo on a song. It was actually, they were doing a cover of Ain't Too Proud to Beg by the Temptations, because Pete wanted me to sing some songs like that just to test my voice out and see whatever. So this guy came in to do a solo on it, and he said, who's singing that? It's great voice, that. Who's singing? And Matt Aiken, one of the producers, said, don't say too much because he's just walking in now with your coffee. So it was so upside down that I'm making coffee for the guys doing the saxophone solo on my goddamn record. But it was also pretty amazing because I kind of felt a bit more part of it, and I felt a bit more. I'm not saying that I earned the right to be there, but I think I understood a bit more than perhaps sometimes when a young kid gets plucked from obscurity. Just say, right, sing this, right, off you go. This is the suit you're going to wear, now off you go. Do you know what I mean? I just felt like I kind of, yeah.
You know, that was Marvin's start too. You know, he started out at Motown running errands.
Really, I didn't know,
know,
that. Wow.
Yeah, he was like running errands first, and then like he was like house drummer, and then, you know, once he started cozying up to Anna Gordy, then she realized that he had a velvety voice and was sort of like, hey, you're obviously doing the wrong jobs. It's time for you to start singing.
I can't even imagine that. He's also one of the most beautiful looking men that's ever walked the earth. And it's like, with that, the way he looked and that voice, like, wow, having somebody see that before, you know.
Yeah.
That's how he nabbed Anna Gordy to,
to
get to the front of the line.
There you go.
So, you know, to hear you tell the story, it's like, you know, you were just around, you're running errands, you're going to sing the song, whatever. At what point does it hit you that like, yo, this is making it? Because it's not like you're one, you know, and I know that this song is now going to live forever in you know, past pop culture. But it's also overshadowing the fact that you also had like 8 other, you know, top 10 hits as well.
Yeah, but I also think that happens with artists sometimes. I mean, obviously, you can look at the greats, and I don't know how many greats got now, but they've careers where there's so many different songs you can say none about this one. And a lot of artists, and I'll throw myself in that, I've got one that everyone remembers remember them from, and then when they go on Spotify or whatever, they go, oh, I kind of remember that one as well, and oh, did he do that? Didn't know that. You know what I mean? There's a bit of that going on, but so I don't feel any. I don't have any hang-ups about. I'm glad I've got that song because it sort of opens doors and windows for me all the time. So I'm okay with it, you know. But I think
it's weird. It's weird to hear that because most of the times I'll run into artists that hate their biggest, you know, Nirvana famously stopped playing Smells Like Teen Spirit the last year and a half. De La Soul hates Me, Myself, and I. I'm working with Mary J. Blige right now, and Jesus H, like, you know, the amount of #1 songs she has, we're just like, I don't do that no more. I don't do that no more. I don't do that. Like, it's like, come on. But yeah, for you though.
I think a lot of it though, I don't know, we're jumping time frame now, but a lot of it goes to the fact that when I kind of quit, I was about 27, 28, and I quit for a lot of reasons. I'd had enough. I knew the writing was on the wall. To sustain any kind of pop career is almost impossible, to be honest. As we say, there are some greats who've done it, but it's so difficult, you know, because it just is. And you've got to give everything you've got, time-wise, effort-wise, everything, all your energy, everything to it. And I was a bit sick of it, and I just didn't want to do it anymore, blah, blah, all those reasons. I was super lucky I got to do it for the time I did. So I didn't sing Never Gonna Give You Up, All Together Forever, or anything else for about 15 years. The only time I ever, or maybe more actually, but the only time I ever did it was at friends' weddings. That's the only time I ever did it, right? And now I do it at friends' kids' weddings, which is even greater, to be honest. That really, that gets me right there that they want me to do that. So that's cool. But I didn't sing those songs. I didn't sing Never Gonna Give You Up, you know, night after night or da-da-da. And I've sort of lived a very simple, very, very comfortable, thank heavens, and I do thank heavens, and I'm grateful for that, but a very obscure life, if you know what I mean, in terms of like, you know, I haven't been famous for all those years in terms of that. I mean, I know there's been a bit of fame come back because of Rick Rowland and the, you know, whatever. And so I approach singing Never Gonna Give You Up completely differently, I think, than perhaps artists who've done it for 33 years. When I came back to it, I'll try and explain that really quickly, right? It's sort of happened in two ways. A promoter who is massive in the UK and is involved in managing me as well. I bumped into him at a showcase in a tiny little pub in London because friends of mine had written the tracks and everything. And he said, look, why don't you sing? Why don't you? And I said, no, I'm done really. You know, and he said, well, why don't you just go out and do it again? I said, well, you know, I haven't done it for years. And he said, well, what if anyway, he got in touch with him. What if I put a little tour together? You can sing anything you want. It'll just be in front of a few hundred people, nothing big. You don't even have to sing your old songs if you don't want. Just walk out there and sing and see if you want to do it again. I'm like, who is this guy? What the, you know? And it turns out this guy is an amazing guy. And he promotes like things from like Coldplay, Adele, right the way down to brand new bands, right? He just loves it, lives it, he breathes it.
Wow.
So I'm like, what a crazy offer that is. It's just unbelievable. And around the same time, I also had an offer to go to Japan, and I'd always turned down all the offers to sing all my old songs. And I just thought, so anyway, so I did this little tour and I sang Frank Sinatra, Burt Bacharach, anything I wanted to that I remember as a kid, my mum and dad used to play. And my dad had a really great voice actually, and he used to sing the wrong words, but he used to sing Frank Sinatra around the house all the time. So I went and did that with a little, you know, little brass section, a very small brass section, 2 or 3 guys, I think actually, and just, you know, just a really stand-up bass, all the rest of it. Tiny little venues. We played Ronnie Scott's. They allowed us to come and do it there because we were doing that kind of thing. Went up and down the country, and I absolutely loved it. And something in my mind went, like a light bulb just went, okay, so you can go out and sing, but it doesn't have to be your be all and end all. It's not every part of your life. You can do it when you want to do it. And I accepted this offer to go to Japan, mainly because our daughter, who was 15 at the time, and my wife really wanted to go. So we went on a really lovely trip, and I sang those songs, Never Gonna Give You Up, Together Forever, and a bunch of others. And again, the same light bulb went on of like, so you go out, you sing them, you walk off stage, you put a different jacket on, and you go out for dinner. And that's it.
Right.
It's not like you go out there, there's 300 screaming fans, there's people taking your picture, there's you've got to do interviews all day the next day. And by the way, you'll be on a plane at 4 o'clock going to another territory to do it all again the next, you know what I mean? It's you can pick and choose. You can have a life in music that isn't, I'm not saying I can ever attain the success I had in the 80s. I can't possibly do that, but I can enjoy it a lot more. And that's kind of what I do and what I've done ever since.
Can I ask though? Okay, so one, I wanted to know, what was the straw that broke the camel's back as far as you walking away, and how did you manage to make a living, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, sure.
For those 15 years.
Yeah. Okay. First one then. I think a lot of things were just coming together. We had some like everybody has got a story about a record they made that never did anything or just didn't see the light of day, didn't get released, whatever. So I had a couple of things like that. We did a record, an album away from Stock Aitken Waterman, my first one, and the first single from it was called Cry for Help. And I was so lucky with that record, but I also knew, well, I might not get to make many more. So I thought I'd love to get a couple of my favorite drummers on it. So we did some stuff with Jeff Picaro came and played drums. We didn't actually use those sections in the end because it turned into something else. Vinny Caliuti came and played drums on that song.
Oh, the monsters. Wow.
Yeah. And I'm sat there in a room going, I don't know what's going on. And I got to play their drum kits as well, by the way.
Right.
And obviously we had some great musicians. Andre Crouch, it was his choir that sang on the record. And obviously, I'm sure to this day, but I think around any of that time through the 90s and onwards, if you wanted a choir, there were a couple of choirs to ask, and he was probably at the top of it. And so some of those experiences were amazing. But anyway, so that record came out. We had a top 10 in America with that song and a top 10 in the UK and lots of different countries. So I thought, this is crazy. I've left Stock Aitken Waterman. I've made a record with Vinny Caliuti on it and a choir. and yet we still had a top 10. And I had long hair as well. I just grew my hair for a bit of a laugh and what have you. And I thought, that's it. We've turned that page. I can go and make records. Cut a long story short, up to that point, I think I'd had like, and this sounds like sour grapes. It's not. I was just shocked by it. I just didn't understand what was going on. The next couple of singles we released didn't really do anything. We didn't get them anywhere near the charts.
Yeah.
And the weird thing was they were more like pop songs than the first one. And it transpires that basically the head of RCA in the UK was moved out. A new person came along, kind of got rid of everybody and started again. And that was in that transition of in the middle of that record. So to be honest, we still, I'm not saying this, believe me, I'm not bragging. I'm just trying to give you the facts, right? We still sold over 1 million albums with one single, but it just didn't go boom, if you know what I mean. And we didn't get any more singles at all in any chart anyway. It just didn't happen. And so it made me realize, and a few like people who know what they're talking about said, look, that just happens every now and again. You can be in the middle of a record, and if your record company just disintegrates, it doesn't matter how good your record is. And even though you've had a hit with it, and the album's kind of out there and it's doing well, and it's could even be top 10, in a couple of weeks, it's just going to die a death because there's nothing making it happen. And what it sort of made me realize was that unless your record company really want this to happen, unless they're really on board, you know what I mean? You've got no chance, really. And I'd never experienced that before. And obviously I was still a kid, really. I was young, you know. So anyway, so that record kind of ended. So we start to make, are we going to make another one? Are we not? Are we what have you? So I'd written a song, I can say this because it's years after now, so it's cool. So Madonna was going to be in a movie called Body of Evidence with Willem Dafoe.
I remember that.
God, I watched this 2 weeks ago.
Oh, you're joking. That's nuts.
I wanted to watch, I had COVID 2 weeks ago, so I wanted to.
Oh, wow.
I wanted to watch all the horrible films I heard about.
Okay,
so I watched Body of Evidence.
Okay. All right.
I watched Basic Instinct 2. I didn't even know there was a
There
sequel.
was yeah, there was a sequel.
Okay.
Garbage. Yeah.
Basic Instinct, yes, but not Basic Instinct 2. Right. So anyway, somebody who was A&R in the project or what have you sort of said, well, look, that whatever. So the guy I wrote Cry for Help with, a guy called Rob Fisher, he and I wrote a couple of songs. This song was called Hopelessly that we wrote. We sent it in to possibly be in the movie. We got this thing back saying, look, we absolutely love it. We're going to come to the UK. We want to be involved in how you record it. We don't not necessarily produce it, but we've got to be there. But we need it done right away because we're really close. We just got to get this thing done. So we went, great. I was mega excited. I'm like, but there's something in the back of my mind's going, why isn't Madonna singing this song? Why isn't she singing her own song? Why isn't she? What's going on here? But he said, no, she doesn't want to sing any of the songs. They don't want any. She wants to act, and that's it. So I'm like, great, that'll do for me. Madonna's going to be part of, this massive thing, and I'm going to get a song in it, and let's go. So we do the song. Everyone said, we love it. It's great. It's perfect. We send it off. It's all great. So my record label, which is still RCA, BMG at the time, said, right, we need you to make an album because this film's coming out in a few months. And so have you got any songs? I said, well, I've got a lot of songs because I've been writing. I've been, and I said, right, just get in this trade. So I went back in the studio with the guy I'd made the last album with, a guy called Gary Stevenson, who's still a good friend today. And we just got stuck into making an album. So we did. So Body of Evidence is coming out, and they've decided they're not going to have any songs in Body of Evidence. They're not going to do this with a lead song because it doesn't really, that's going to confuse people and whatever, right? Maybe they did have a song in the end. Yeah, maybe they did have a song in the end. I can't remember, but they certainly didn't have ours. I don't think they had any.
Right.
I think they just had the theme music. They didn't want to confuse Madonna's career with like this music that was out. It's like, what is it? Anyway, whatever. And maybe that's just the way I'm remembering it. So at this point, when I go into the record label, and I've made an album at this point, most people, when I walk in the building, are kind of looking out the window, hoping not to make eye contact because now they don't know what to do. Now they don't know what to do. It's like, is this record any good? Is it the right record? Should we be doing this? I'd like to keep my career, so I'm just going to look out the window when he walks in the building. So that record didn't really, and at this point, I'm like, you know what? I think I'm just going to walk away. I think I'm just going to say, look, I'm going to, while no one's watching, and they obviously weren't, I'm just going to walk, I'm going to walk out the side door. And I spoke to my manager, who spoke to my lawyer. I was doing promotion for that record that had this song Hopelessly, which was going to be there, whatever. And I think we were getting we were sort of getting a bit of headway in America, actually, funnily enough. And I was going to the airport, I was going to Heathrow to get on a plane to go to New York to be on a TV show, I forget which one, to sing this song Hopelessly. And it was sort of getting played a little bit, but it wasn't getting the full, do you know what I mean? And something in me said, I've got a daughter at home who is like, you know, 1 year old, I think she was, something like that. I've just done loads of promotion in Europe and it all felt pointless.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you guys have been there, but it just felt
Absolutely.
pointless. It felt like,
Yes.
you know, it almost felt embarrassing, like sort of like we should just not be doing this, really. They don't want to do it. I'm not sure I want to do it anymore. So I'm going to Heathrow and I turn around to my manager, who's still one of my closest people in my life. And, you know, he's a bit of a surrogate father. And I said, I think I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I just don't want to go, and I don't want to go, and I don't want to do this. And I knew what it meant, because I knew that that's it. You know, you don't not go to New York to go and do a TV show and the record company go, oh, that's fine. I said, I think I'm done. So he said, fine, let's call the lawyer and we'll just see if they'll let you walk away and forget about it, and we'll shake hands and we'll do that. And so we turned the car around and I went home and I cried a bit. You know, I did, obviously. I knew what it meant. And I just went home and we had a bit of a hug, and he drove home and he called my lawyer and he called BMG. And to be fair to them, they said, yeah, we're okay with it. If he wants to quit, we don't want to do it anymore. And that was it.
Wow. That's a rarity to one.
Yeah, that's about as good as it gets in this business. Like,
yeah, because most people try to force their will, stay till the wills are long gone.
All the fucking years,
But I think also I'd had a very explosive pop career, you know, one of those kind of like boom, sort of like, I don't think I'd really come to terms with a lot of it. I don't think I'd not grown up. I'd gone from being 19 to signing a little production deal, 21 massive single that, you know, on a really big album. It was huge, that album, and around the world and everything, and knots, and I never really, I think got to sort of get totally comfortable. I think I was always chasing my tail, and always kind of like, I almost felt like I was always running after a bus that was just always like leaving the depot before I got, you know what I mean? And so
right.
I didn't grow up as a human. I've become a dad, but I didn't feel like a grown-up, you know what I mean? So, and anyway, very long answer. So the next part of the equation is this. That first album did really, really well. I wrote 4 songs on my own on it. The next album did pretty well. It did about half what the second one did, and I wrote 5 or 6 of them. So, and even the Cry for Help song that was on that album called Free, you know, we did 1 million something with that record, and I wrote a lot of those tunes and co-produced it and blah, blah. So in other words, I made quite a lot of money because we sold a lot of, you know, that first album sold over 8 million, I think, you know what I mean? So we sold a lot of records back then, because if you had a hit couple of songs, pop songs, that very often meant you sold a lot of records. And so I just kind of was comfortable with that. But I've never owned a fleet of Ferraris. I've never driven a Rolls Royce into a swimming pool.
You weren't balling out of control.
No, I think, again, I owe that back to my upbringing, in the sense that I'm from a very working class area. My dad had a little business, so I always knew there was a tax man. I didn't understand what it meant as a kid, but I knew he was coming. And I knew he wanted some money from my dad. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So my dad would be sat at home doing his paperwork, and he'd be going, right, well, that's for the tax man. I'm like, what? I kind of thought a tax man was going to come with a bag almost. Do you know what I mean? As a kid, I thought he was going to knock on the door and go, give me the money, you know. But I always knew that was there. And so I think every bit of money that I earned, I think also because I was so busy for, like, certainly the first 3-4 years. Well, I only did it for 4 or 5 years. The first 3 years of it, I was so busy, I didn't buy anything. I didn't even buy a house until quite a few, you know what I mean? Because I was always traveling, I was always away.
Moving.
Yeah. So, and also I think that whole kind of like MTV Cribs, look at my house lifestyle, unless you were one of the absolute greats, Elton John, The Who, the what have you, that, you know, whoever, you didn't live like that. I think people just got on with it and then realized they made some money some years later. You know what I mean?
You tell that to my friends.
Hey, you work with Elton John, man. Speaking of which, what was it like working with him?
Yeah, I mean, that guy is amazing in so many different ways. He got in touch. He cut a long story short. The first time any sort of connection was Never Gonna Give You Up got this award at the BPI Awards of Single of the Year. And because it was live back then, it was at the Albert Hall. And funnily enough, just mentioned the Who were closing the show and they were playing live at the Albert Hall. So the award for single is pretty much one of the last awards. So I was stood on this podium waiting to get the award with the audience looking at me, but not the TV audience. And I've got this camera on me. And to me, I'm thinking the camera's on. So I'm just stood there waiting for someone to stand up and go, and the single of the year goes to Rick Astley for Never Gonna, right there you go. So I'm just stood there and the Albert Hall's low looking at me. And I'm like, but it didn't happen. No one came on the podium and no one gave me the award. And somebody just went, ladies and gentlemen, the Who. And they just steamed into like, I don't know what song is that. So I'm just stood there going, what is going on? And I'm literally still on this round podium just in the middle somewhere. And I'm going like, and the camera's still looking at me. I'm going, what do I do? Do I walk? Do I shuffle away? Do I walk away? Do I look at the Who? And I didn't know what to do. And eventually I just kind of like, just sideways, just kind of walked out of the picture.
You
like,
Irish exited.
I just walked away. Anyway, I wasn't even upset because I was too in the sort of nonsense of it all to be upset. I was like, I don't know what's going on. It's television, it's live TV. So I woke up, but believe me, backstage, it all kicked off. My God, there was some like hoo-has, I mean, there really was. And my manager was really angry. I mean, he was like fuming, do you know what I mean? And the Stock Aitken Waterman guys were going ape shit, you know what I mean? It was a big deal because like they'd actually written and produced the song that had done, you know what I mean, the business that year and blah, blah. So anyway, a couple of days later, a crate of, I think it was Cristal champagne arrived at my manager's office from Elton John to me saying, like, I'm really, really sorry. What an awful thing to happen. That's absolutely terrible. All the best. Keep on making music. Don't let it get you down. Do it. A really nice letter. And I was just thinking, like, this is just, how amazing is that? You know what I mean? To sort of, but obviously, as time has gone on, I've obviously understood he's had his moments in life, I'm sure, where he's been let down and he's been, do you know what I mean? And I think he's always done that thing of reaching out to younger artists, sort of saying, look, if you ever want any advice, if you ever want to, so he invited myself out and my wife and I went to dinner with him and a few friends. And he was just chatting about stuff really and just being a nice dude, you know what I mean? And just kind of saying, look, if you ever want to talk, if you ever get, and I also think because obviously he, especially in the latter, years, I think he's also been very helpful to people who've been going through major problems, with drugs and drink and all the rest of it and all kinds of things, I think that's what his life is about really now, is about more giving back than it is taking, if you know what I mean. But anyway, that's another world to get into. But on that dinner that night, he said, look, if you ever want me to come and play, if you want to come and play on a record, just get in touch, And I'm like, and I'm listening to him say the words, but I'm not really computing it. So anyway, sure enough, he did. He came and played, and he just rolled up. He just rocked up, and just played piano on a couple of songs on that record that I did when I left Songwriting Session. And he's just always been great. I made a record a few years ago when I turned 50. I made a record in my garage at home.
50.
Just to kind of say to myself what I could do. I didn't even have a record deal at the time, and we went to see him in Vegas. And I'm saying this because I'm proud of myself, but I also want to say how great he is in that same sentence. We went to see him just because we've seen him a bunch of times, and I wanted to see the show that he does in Vegas. He was doing the Red Jacket. He's just sat there, and he knows I'm in the audience, kind of thing. And he sat there, and he just says to the audience, he says, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, there's a young man in the audience tonight. Not that I was young, but there's a guy in the audience tonight. He said, if you're going to buy a record in the next few weeks or next month, buy Rick Astley's record. Buy Rick Astley's record. It's called 50. It's an absolutely fantastic record. And I'm like, what is going on? It's like,
wow.
And he's always done things like that. I mean, for loads of artists, I think, and he's still keen on working with other artists and doing duets and all the rest of it. And so I just think he's one of those people that I know some people around him. I'm really good friends with Davey Johnson, who's his MD and his guitar player for all the years that he's been going, really. So I've been to loads of his gigs and, been around some of the stories and sung backgrounds on the Lion King, some of those songs and stuff like that. Because I was just there. Someone says, like, get in there, dude, go and sing, and stuff. And so, yeah, I just think he's one of those people who's still in love with music. He's still, back in the days of CDs and what have you, he would go into stores. I'm sure you've heard this story. It's legendary.
Yeah.
He'd go in there and he'd come out with 2 great big bags of CDs
Mm-hmm.
because he still wanted to be like, what's going on? I should know what's going on. And I want to hear that thing. You know, what is it? So
No, he's the real deal. He was one of the first people, the very first people to when I won the BAFTA and the Oscar, he was one of the first people to cold call me and congratulate me. And you know,
amazing.
He's like that. Are you shocked at the level of adoration that you're getting for like these cover songs that you do in your show now? And speaking of net worth, did you resist the temptation to do a Zeppelin song at net worth when you did it? Or
yeah, no, it wasn't that kind of a net worth, to be honest. I think it was just because it was big enough to get 2,500 cars in there with gardens, private gardens, or whatever you want to call them, whatever.
Right.
No, it's funny. I've never really got the lead out, to be honest. I've got friends who are so into Zeppelin, it's freaky. And obviously John Bonham, that's another story, right? Because like, just great. But I think, yeah, no, it's never really, I'm not saying I'm not a fan and I don't appreciate Zeppelin, but if I ever go, well, and I do love a lot of rock music, I still play drums in a midlife crisis punk rock covers band for fun and what have you. And we go from like more AC/DC, to be honest. And then
I saw the Back in Black one.
Right, okay, and more sort of punky rock sort of things. The thing is, it's how I start, it's how most people start. You start by covering other people's songs. And there's a real joy in doing it. There's a real...
well, you look like you're having the time of your life when you're doing it.
Yeah, I do. I love it. And every time, for instance, we toured in the UK in October into November, and we'd postponed that tour a couple of times. So I went into rehearsals, and they know what's coming, my band and crew and everything. They know I'm going to walk in on the last day, because I don't like to give people much warning, and say, right, we're going to do Watermelon Sugar by Harry Styles. And everyone's like, right, fine, what key, how we...
And they got to learn it.
Yeah, and they just got to play it. But the other reason I kind of like to do that is because if we can't all just shuffle into it and just play it and make it work, we shouldn't be doing it, unless it just sort of happens instantly. So we've done loads of covers, and I love doing it. I still absolutely love it. And I think, to be honest, there's an element about doing other people's songs that there's a tension relief, because it's like you're just doing a cover. Do you know what I mean? It's not like you're trying to represent for the audience something they've paid to come and watch. They've sort of gone, right, I bought that first album 30 odd years ago. I want him to do Never Gonna Give You Up. I want it to sound like the record. I want him to, you know what I mean? I feel I owe them that, you know what I mean? And that's not in a negative. I want to give them that. But I think when you do covers, you can just sort of say, it don't really matter. I don't mean that with any disrespect to the artist at all. I just mean it's just having fun. You know, I think all artists like covering other people's songs. It's just
I totally
fun.
get it.
You know, it's just fun. Yeah.
So my last question is, who explained to you what Rick rolling was?
Okay. I have one of my closest friends, a guy called Andrew Frampton, and he is and his brother, actually, Daniel, has mixed and engineered last couple of albums for me and stuff. But Andrew is a producer and a writer and lots of other things. I was on holiday in Italy, and he literally rickrolled me in an email. So this is years ago, obviously. And I'm like, so I just emailed him back and going, okay, whatever, send. And then, so he did it again. And I'm like, replied an answer to him saying, what are you doing? You know what I mean? We've known each other years, right? Like, what are you actually doing? What, you know, because I didn't grasp what it was at all. And it's also, this is the early days of YouTube. It's the early days of someone getting an email with a video link in it. That, I mean, I know that's like, just so makes me like a granddad, but I mean, it was early that was quite a novel thing.
Right.
So in the end, we're on our holiday in Italy. We're on the Amalfi Coast. I remember where I was and everything, the hotel and everything. So I get on the phone to him like, Andrew, what the hell are you doing? Right? What are you doing? Kind of thing. And he's laughing and he's like, so you don't know what a rickroll is? I'm like, what? No, I don't even know. I don't know the term, the language, the nothing. So he kind of explained it to me. And even then I still sort of thought, nah, this is just him joking. This is just him doing this and a couple of other friends that he's going to get to email me and do whatever. And I had no idea that it was actually this little bubble on the internet that people were, you know. So, and to be honest, I give credit to my daughter for mostly putting me right about it. I'd been nominated for an MTV award in whenever it was, 15 years ago. Something to do with best live act or best something, which all they were doing, they were jumping on the Rickroll thing. And they were having a bit of fun. They were having a bit of fun, possibly at my expense, and that's whatever. But it was going to be in Liverpool. And I knew that Sir Paul McCartney was going to be getting a Lifetime Achievement Award from Bono in Liverpool, right?
Right.
And I'm like, am I going to go to that? No, I am not, right? I wasn't even really going to go anyway, but I thought, I'm definitely not going there. If it would have been in Leipzig or Hamburg or Brussels, I might have gone to that, right?
Right.
I ain't going to Liverpool with Sir Paul McCartney and Bono. That ain't happening, right? And my daughter said, she said, look, there's no way you're going to that. That's just like some, and I said, no, you're right. You know, and she was like 15, 16, whatever she was. He said, you do realize it's got nothing to do with you. And I went, what? And I was actually, I was stunned actually. I'm like, what do you mean it's got nothing to do with it? It actually says Rick Roll. I'm the Rick in the Rick Roll. It's the video. I'm in the video. He said, yeah, but it's got nothing to do with you. And it was like really wise words
Freeing
from a young woman, young girl, because she was absolutely right. It's got everything to do with me and nothing to do with me at the exact same time. And it's probably the best bit of advice that I ever had about it, all of it. And that is to say, it's over there and it's doing whatever it is, and it's a thing and it's what have you, and it can be fun, and you can even enjoy the fun and get involved in it sometimes. But it isn't. It's a thing and it's a whatever. Just it's there, whatever it is. And that's because she was of the generation to understand the internet way more than I was. So, you know, even though I'd had it explained by one of my best friends who was my age,
Right.
her explanation of it in a real way was kind of a lot more useful to me, if you know what I mean.
How often do you get offers to do a Rick roll? Or what's your most famous Rick roll turn down that you've done? Like, I'm not doing that.
Well, I get really commercial ones for money, basically, with products and things and all the rest of it. And I'll do ones that I think are okay and I think they're fine and they're not, you know, in any way. And also because if they have a bit of a sense of humor about it, if you know what I mean. I've just done a few months ago, did one for a video game for Guardians of the Galaxy. And I loved that movie. The first movie when it came out, I absolutely loved it. And the way they use music, I think is such a blessing. Because kids know those songs, even the ones from the 70s, 80s, whatever, they know those songs.
Yeah.
Like we were talking at the very beginning, all three of us talking at the beginning about how we listen to music, how we come across it and stuff. So I thought that was a really cool thing to do. And the guys who made the video game were really great. So I'm more than happy to be invited to do that. But there's just times when I just look at it and I go, no, I just don't feel that. It's just, and I also think, it's a really difficult thing to navigate, I think, how far to just do something for money. But don't get me wrong, my wife manages me, and we have a criteria of things that need answering. The first one that usually comes up is, where is it? Because if somebody says it's in Santiago in Chile, then we're almost on the plane, right? And I don't love flying, but we're almost on the plane. Because we have great promoters down there, we've got some great wine down there, we love it down there.
And you know, great experience.
And if someone says to you, you know, somewhere like that, or you know, anywhere in South America, that's like you know, Japan I've been to quite a few times, one way or another, different places. There's lots of places in the world. Coming back to America and getting to go to towns and cities in such a way like this with the guys and everything, it's been such a treat, really. Not something I can do on my own in any way, shape, or form. So, you know, but the truth of it is, it's like, where is it? It's also kind of, yes, there's money involved, usually, of course there is. But what we also look at is we sometimes say, well, you know what, we'll do that because that basically means we can do this. Well, we're not going to make any money, but I just really want to do it. By the time we've flown the band and the crew there, it's probably going to cost me money, but I really want to do it. I really want to do it, and that pays for it. And I'm not afraid or embarrassed to talk about that because at the end of the day, music is a business and it has to kind of balance out at some point. And you pick and choose and you do the ones, you know. So I think I've just always used my head in terms of thinking about the Rickroll thing and never going to give you up and saying, look, I don't want to bleed it dry because I don't. But sometimes there's opportunities that come along and sometimes they just happen. sometimes they just happen in front of me, and it's like I'm getting on the stage and I'm singing that song right now because it's just happened, you know. It's tricky, and like you said, there's a lot of artists who want to run a million miles from their biggest, oldest song, and I kind of go the other way. I sort of embrace it, and it's like an old jacket, and it's kept me warm for 30 odd years. Do you know what I mean? So I have that kind of like comfortable love for it, I think.
Well, that's inspirational, because I'm a human being that is highly uncomfortable when nice gestures happen or people show you love or that sort of thing. Like I would have probably been the opposite and run away from it. But you know, it's really inspiring to see someone in a healthy way just embrace their work and really enjoy it, and not be serious, but not take them themselves that seriously, because you know I've run across many an artist that does nothing but try to sabotage a good thing, and you know.
I understand it. I do understand it. Don't get me wrong, I do. And like I say, that me having that 15 years or more not doing it is what I think allows me to be comfortable about it now, because I'm not a kid anymore and I'm not wrapped up in it. And don't get me wrong, I want to represent it when I sing it live. You know, when I'm out with new kids doing this, or whether I'm doing my own shows, wherever it is, I want to go out and sing that song the best I possibly can. And I want anybody who remembers it and has some love for it to have that emotion with me, and vice versa, and share it a bit and say, yeah, I was there. I bought the t-shirt. I remember, you know, because I go to, whether it's Sir Paul McCartney in Fort Worth the other week, or whether it's somebody who's nowhere near his level of you know, greatness or whatever, whether it's somebody just starting out or what have you, if I've got a connection with them because I, you know, loved that record, then I want to feel that in the room. And if I feel they're up and doing it, just painting my numbers up there, going, looking at the watch, going, oh, I'll be off the stage in 10 minutes. I'm like, I'd rather walk out. I don't want to know. Do you know what I mean? We still got to respect it, I think, however old the song is. And even if it's become an internet meme, you still have to respect what the true emotion of it when somebody heard it the first time.
And I appreciate you for, you know, taking the time out with us and sharing your journey and your story. And, you know, whether on the radio or Ted Lasso or the internet, you know, the song's going to be here forever, man.
It will live forever.
And I appreciate you for sharing this with us. And this is Rick Astley on Questlove Supreme on behalf of Fontigolo, Sugar Steve, Unpaid Bill, and myself and Laia. We thank you guys, and we'll see you on the next go round of Questlove Supreme. All right, yeah.